There are people who think they know their St. Joseph history, and then there are others who really know it. That latter group might not be surprised to hear more about one of St. Joe's oldest, yet least known cemeteries. KQ2's Alan Van Zant with how a national organization is trying to bring attention to a man buried in the city's Sunbridge Cemetery.
In this rolling hillside landscape in North St. Joseph rests well more than 150 years of the city's history. Tucked away somewhere between Krug Park and Rubidoux Middle School is Sunbridge Cemetery.
The city bought the land in the 1850s, and shortly after that it was deemed to become the burial ground for the city's poor.
According to the Northwest Missouri Genealogy Society, there are more than 6,000 burials at Sunbridge. But today you can barely even tell it's a cemetery. There are few permanent headstones, and many of them are now unreadable. Any of the wooden crosses that might have been there at one time have also weathered away. A fire burned down the cemetery caretaker's home in the 1930s, destroying the cemetery records. So today, it's hard to really know who is buried where. However, after much research, a Wisconsin man believes Sunbridge Cemetery is the eternal home of one Oliver Wells, who was a colonel who fought for the Union in the Civil War.
He participated in a number of battles. The most prominent was the Battle of Franklin, and then he participated in the Powder River Indian Expedition after that.
Frank Jastrzemski founded the Shrouded Veteran Organization with a mission of identifying Civil War veterans who are buried in unmarked graves and giving them a proper recognition.
The greatest part about all of this is when you start researching someone, it's just a name. But then when you start really digging in, you find these tidbits of information and you find out how interesting people really are.
Jastrzemski has uncovered several documents referring to Wells, learning he was born in Quebec, Canada in 1820 and came to St. Joseph around 1860 before enlisting in the Civil War. Following the war, he came back to St. Joseph, working as a chief clerk for the Internal Revenue Collector's Office until he died in 1874 and was buried at Sunbridge.
Like Wells isn't a Grant or Lee of the war, but just from what I've discovered about him, he seems like he was a fascinating individual.
While Jastrzemski successfully placed more than 50 gravestones at the burial sites of former Civil War veterans, ironically, he's never personally been to any of those locations to see his work in person. And that he will someday see a headstone at the burial site of Oliver Wells appears to be steep, though the city of St. Joseph is looking through any of the records that they might have.
I still think it's important to get him a headstone, even if it's not necessarily positioned on his exact location where he was buried. If there's a plot or an area that it can be placed just to commemorate him and honor him for his service.
For those who love history, just bringing the story of Oliver Wells and his military history to light has been worth it.
Oh, it's very exciting, and it's always exciting to rediscover people who would have otherwise been forgotten.
Alan Van Zant, KQ2 News.
Jastrzemski says while the Veterans Administration will pay for a headstone for an unmarked veteran's grave, his organization pays for it to be delivered to the proper location. You can find out more about Shrouded Veterans on the organization's Facebook page.